Have you lost the connection with your higher self? Are you noticing the dis-ease of the outside world? It's time to reconnect with nature and each other and raise our consciousness, vibration, and frequency. Together we can create a world of peace and abundance. It's Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spiritual Revolution Radio. Today, we are with Joe DeVito. He has really dedicated his life right now and in the purpose he has in life to helping youth who have addiction problems, who have some mental issues, and is also attending university in learning how to deal with health of people from an energy standpoint, more of an energy standpoint. And we're going to get into a conversation today about healing and how we can not only heal ourselves, but how you're using what you're doing with the youth. Why don't we start there? Just kind of tell us your story and how you got involved with that and what brought this all about for you.
Oh, geez. Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this show. Getting to this point has come with a great deal of suffering, which has proven to be the divine gift in my life. It's been a pattern in my life. Getting to this point, grew up in Southern California, experienced the loss of a father at a really early age, which triggered a very deep sense of fear in me that I carried all the way into adulthood. After my dad passed away, my mother came into my life. She was battling addiction issues herself and her own traumatic childhood experiences that she had unresolved. And so I was directly in the way of that. Experienced a lot of emotional abuse in the home with her, a lot of mental abuse. Didn't quite know how to navigate life. Always yearned for a secure attachment with an adult role model that was never present. And so I got to be able to navigate that all on my own, which came with an overwhelmingly difficult sense of pride. It was nearly impossible for me to reach out and ask for help just due to the belief systems that I took on early in childhood and carried into adulthood. So having lived and survived and actually now beginning to thrive from a traumatic childhood experiences, I was also faced with addiction. I had a really significant battle with a heroin addiction and meth addiction that nearly took my life, which was the fast track to suffering that I needed in order to surrender.
Yeah, let go.
Yeah. Which has proven to be quite the process. I'm realizing even today. From healing the addiction, I took a job as a direct care staff for a facility that houses male teens that have been severely neglected and traumatized themselves and who have acted out behaviorally that is not acceptable to society. The beginning of that journey was really difficult with the countertransference of trauma. I noticed some of their behaviors and some of their outbursts, lack of emotional regulation was triggering me. But it was also a gift in disguise because it was showing me where I was still not free within myself to be able to hold that compassionate space for somebody who is suffering so deeply and profoundly. So I've been there for a couple of years, and I've taken on quite a few different roles within that organization, one being a group facilitator and another one being more whatever label you want to place on it, but you could look at it as a client development specialist, where I'm now working with them at a deeper level of uncovering what's driving the behavior, what are their barriers towards rehabilitation, and helping them overcome those barriers.
And these are boys up to 18, obviously.
Yeah, 15 to 18.
15 to 18 in a live-in facility.
It's a residential treatment center, yeah.
So, and is there a common theme that you've noticed over the last couple of years working with these kids, or is it all over the place?
Well, when we look at it from a behavioral standpoint, it's really hard to understand because we have this model and expectations of how people should behave. And I think I carry that even into parenting my children at times. I have this expectation for them to follow direction, and if they don't, I automatically have that thought it's defiance. But working with them at such a deep level, I start to notice the same patterns that I also had subjective experience with throughout my entire life.
Right.
Which was this total disconnection from the authenticity of yourself. People always telling you that this doesn't fit our model of what's acceptable, so you exile that part of yourself. And they were extremely neglected. They were all abandoned, either that or they're adopted, experienced significant physical, sexual, emotional, spiritual abuse within the home for years on end. And coming into this life as an infant, the number one innate survival instinct we have is to create secure attachment. And if that's not present, then it's extremely difficult for us to trust. It's extremely difficult for us to allow ourselves to be loved or to love in general.
Sure.
And that's essentially what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, is this egoic extremist self that tells them they're unworthy of love. And when you can start to recognize and really understand that from a compassionate standpoint, that opens the door for healing.
So tell me, how did your experience really help you with the experience you're going through now? I mean, obviously you lived it, but
yeah,
what are you taking from that you really feel you're giving these boys right now?
One thing that I've took away from my own subjective experiences, that I can give to them is really that it's okay. They're still lovable. We're always lovable. And that it's okay to express yourself authentically. It may not be socially acceptable in some environments, but it's always okay for you to express yourself. Vulnerability is one of their biggest barriers, because that's been used against them by people they trusted and people that were supposed to be there to love them. And that's something I have direct experience with. But my level of compassion, based on my experiences of having healed those childhood wounds, has grown immensely. To be able to sit there and hold space for somebody who is suffering at such a profound level and just hug them. Let them know it's going to be okay. For me, that's what I always yearn for. I always yearned for a parent to be available, to be there in my life, to hug me and let me know everything was going to be okay, because it didn't feel like it. That was my reality all of the time.
Right.
I was always looking for the next emotional threat, the next experience of grave loss.
So what has brought back around then your healing experience? I mean, you went through this as a child. Then you went into addiction with meth and heroin, which heroin, I had a daughter who went through the same thing, and it was terrible, and very difficult to overcome.
It was terrible, but
so,
I think the one thing that I was always looking for, and why I see addiction was so prevalent in my life, was this altered state of consciousness that these things didn't exist in. And I achieved that through, one, it started off with work, an addiction to work and this idea of success.
mm-hmm.
I had early success, but that's all my focus was on, is that if I achieved these things, I would matter and I would be loved.
Right.
I had that attachment to it. Now that has shifted. The addiction, I remember the very last day that I woke up out of an overdose and threw my arms up in the air, and I was just crying, and I said, there's got to be something more. I've always known that at a deeper level, that there was something more than what I was experiencing. And so from that day forward, I dedicated myself to healing, and I didn't have any idea what that looked like early on. But I knew, based on what my body was telling me, that there was some deep healing that needed to take place. That initially started in a program of recovery where I was introduced to kind of the dual diagnosis mental health aspect of what drives addiction. But then I got into trauma therapy, and that really started to open the door. It provided me a safe place to express myself and to do that inner child work, because there was a story in there that needed to be validated, needed to be heard and expressed. I never had the guidance of someone to be able to sit through sadness with me and tell me that it was an okay emotion to feel and that it would pass, and show me how to navigate through some of these lower vibrational energies such as shame and guilt and remorse, which addiction thrives on.
Right.
I didn't get that until I stepped into the rooms of therapy. From there, you know, I heard in recovery that this was a spiritual program, and that became an obsession for me early on. It also became the tool I used to bypass some of the traumatic memories that were coming up in my body. My nervous system was a wreck. But practices of yoga, bringing back together the mind and body. I've been doing transcendental meditation twice a day for almost a year now. And to be able to have a tool, a technology really, of being able to calm my nervous system enough to where I can actually do some of the internal work is a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important for our listeners to hear, like, you still have issues. Like, you still have that trauma doesn't just go away.
No.
You know, you deal with it, you bring it up, you deal with it, you recognize it, you work through it. But you still have days, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Right. And it's not about getting rid of it.
Right.
For me, it's about being able to finally find comfort in it and embrace it and learn from it. So just last month, I went through a bout with depression. You know, doing all of this, the shadow work and things of that nature as part of my healing process has brought up a great deal of suppressed emotional memory and energy. Mm-hmm. And it started off as sadness, but I still struggle with those attachments to sadness and start drawing in on past memories and thoughts and things of that nature that transform it into a state of depression. But it was the first time I was able to be in a state of depression and be okay with it.
Yeah. You were like, you recognized it. All of a sudden wasn't out of control or scary or anything else.
Or judgment.
Yeah, or judgmental. Yeah, it's something you recognize and you can sit in and say, okay, now I can work through this process.
Right.
Which really, I spend a lot of time with people teaching meditation. That's the secret to meditation is learning to recognize those things and being able to sit with it and be okay with it. We all have a shadow side to ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. We all, I always tell people, just because someone may be kind or nice or whatever, doesn't mean that they have that other side of them. It just is sleeping right now.
Yeah,
right.
It's dormant.
That's right. Wait till it wakes up.
Yep.
May not be so pretty. So we all have that, and we need to sit in it. And meditation, I think, is one of the best ways. You're using transcendental meditation, which is amazing, and it's not easy to learn and sit in and do, but really I think meditation is the key to getting started with that. You also you said yoga, right?
Yeah.
Do you do yoga every day?
No, 3 times a week.
3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why you're in such great shape.
The physical component, something I'm still working on, the health component. And I see that you're well versed in that area as well, just researching you a little bit. And but yeah, as far as the normality of my life, it's very much normal. Right. I've normalized some of my experiences because, given the fact that I'm dealing with 12 teenagers on a day-to-day basis who bring a whole bundle of different energies with them, and I am empathic to that, I find myself at times being reactive. The difference now, though, is I'm able to get curious with the reaction. And one of the things that I use for myself often, even with my children in parenting, is what would this experience be like if I opened my heart to it? Mm-hmm. And then when I have some time to myself, I'll reflect back on some of those experiences throughout the day and find out what is driving that reaction. And oftentimes it's a self-judgment. It's an insecurity. It's a past memory that I'm still attached to. But I've created such a safe space with myself that it's okay to revisit some of those things.
Right.
And allow them to come up and breathe into them.
And you said you've been working with the boys for a couple of years now, right? And have you noticed a change in the group you're working with?
Yes. More prevalent in the ones that have been there for some time. It seems like at about 8 to 9 months into the program, and they can be in there as long as 15 months or even more. But typically at that 8 or 9 months, there's this overwhelming expression of gratitude that you see within these boys. They're able to communicate assertively. They're able to be vulnerable and express their needs and wants and feel deserving of that. They're able to start leading by example within their own group dynamic that they're, involved with. And so when people say, we see the light come on, it's pretty amazing to be witness to that and not be stuck in the suffering component of it.
Right. There's probably a great satisfaction from that,
There is. People say, well, you should be selfless with compassion. And I'm like, there's always a reward. Right. For me. There's always that internal feeling of gratitude that, Ram Dass has a great saying, and I just love it. He says, I work on myself as a help to others, and I help others as a work on myself.
Right.
And I found that to be absolutely true.
It's interesting. I've heard that saying before, and if you look at the raw material, it talks in there about love of self and others, mm-hmm. or others and self, and it's really the same thing. When you're loving others, you're really in service to self, and when you're loving yourself, you're in service to others. Right.
Right.
It's really the same type of thing, and it comes from a little bit different background. But I use that a lot too. People are always like, well, I've got to do all this for myself. I've got to heal myself. I've got to take care of this. And I really believe that part of that healing is giving yourself to others in bringing about that healing for yourself.
Absolutely. It comes in full circle. That's part of our purpose. I think if anyone's trying to search for what their purpose is, it's always in accordance with the service to others.
That's right. So we've been talking a lot about what you've been doing, but I know you have some cool goals in mind, and you have a direction. Tell us a little bit about the direction you're heading, what you're doing now, what you want to do when you grow up. How's that?
Well, gosh, no pressure. When I get big, I would like to have a collective integrative healing center where we introduce many different spiritual modalities to natural healing of mind and body and recognizing that connection. I'm a firm believer in holistic health, not a firm believer in let's medicate symptoms. They do have their place to create a baseline for people, especially through what I've noticed in my own occupation right now. It helps them to be able to get to a baseline and achieve their goals and start to thrive. So based on that, I initially wanted to be a substance abuse counselor, given that's where my main focus was. I'm addiction free. Mm-hmm. Wanted to help others in addiction recovery. That quickly changed as I started to grow internally and heal to studying human consciousness and human potential and integrative health. Integrative health is the main degree with a specialized focus in human consciousness and human potential. And that has been a blessing for me to be a part of learning Vedic science and all about human consciousness and really what human potential is, because I myself had a very skewed view of what that was. Still had that attachment to it was external.
Right. It comes from the outside rather than from within.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Vedic is very about coming from within, and truly, we're spiritual beings living a physical experience.
Right.
So the only way to truly heal ourselves, emotionally or physically, is from within. And people get so confused; they keep looking outwardly. Even using an energy healer, a lot of times people will be looking outwards and thinking, "Oh, this energy healer is going to heal me." Well, an energy healer truly doesn't heal you.
Right.
They just open you up to healing yourself, right? So I think there's a lot of confusion out there on how really to heal yourself and how really to be involved with healing others.
Right.
So, and I suspect the things you're learning now in it's Maharishi University.
Yeah.
You're probably able to use in your current job and even expand on those.
Really
things.
in every aspect. The one thing I like about this university is that it's focused on being a consciousness-based education program where they're uncovering your full potential as a knower instead of just focusing all the time and energy on objective knowledge. One of the requirements was to enroll in the Transcendental Meditation program and begin practicing that as one of the forms of being able to really expand our conscious awareness enough to where we can tap into that ocean of consciousness and wisdom and intelligence and potential. Potential for me today is purely internal. The potential to heal naturally, holistically, the potential to love, the potential to have compassion, the potential to heal myself. And those are all new concepts to me that have always been there. But this healing journey has been very unique. It was like once I uncovered that bit of gold of the authentic self, I couldn't stop.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. At what point, I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, at what point and how long ago was it that this kind of came about for you? I mean, you had an addiction how long ago? And at what point did you just start this? When did it click in that journey?
It clicked. Well, the addiction really started with substances when I was 28. Didn't click until I was 37 and a half, which was my last day using. I had abandoned my children. I walked by their house. I saw them through a panoramic view window. Felt like that wasn't something that I would ever be a part of again. And I decided to try and take my own life. Woke up the next morning. I was homeless at the time, living on the streets. That's when it clicked. There's a spiritual component that I've been missing this entire time. And I don't know, I've always been such a self-aware person, and people have always said, you're emotionally intelligent, Joe, and all of these things, you're full of potential, all these things that I didn't believe because of all the beliefs that I've taken on throughout most of my life, through societal, familial, and cultural conditioning, not to mention the early childhood experiences that I had.
Sure.
And so to be able to rid myself of these belief systems now and really step into my essence it's empowering. But that first day of surrender was really what was my meal ticket to uncovering who I really am. And I'm still working on that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, well, I am too, and I've got you in a few years, so.
Yeah.
I think that's a lifetime project, right? That we're all part of, that we have to do. I think there's a lot of people out there that just are, and even people that I know that are empathic and work in energy healing and whatnot, a lot of them seem to be closing themselves off right now. And obviously the social pandemic that's going on around, and I'm talking not just the COVID pandemic, but the mental pandemic that's going on in the world is causing a lot of this. Where I'm going to share some places people can go for help, but where would you suggest people go for help to get that knowledge, that help, that and there's kids probably listening to this, or people listening to this that really need help or are lost. They've reached that place that you reached,
right?
That I've reached in my life, and then said, "Gosh, I've got to change. I can't live this way any longer."
Well, I mean, it all to me, I feel like it depends on, has the person suffered a traumatic childhood or many traumatic experiences in their life? If so, there's a different process to that healing, which was true for me. I had to heal some of that traumatic suppressed energy before I could actually step into the realm of spirituality and be receptive to it and open to it. Spiritual coaching is a new thing that's coming out. I guess it's probably been there forever. Obviously it has, through gurus and mentorship and things of that nature. But I would definitely recommend somebody step into that realm of a spiritual healer or a coach, somebody that can guide them from a place of love and compassion. Right.
And let them know that they are loved and everything's going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've got about 50 seconds left here. I just want to let everybody know they can find me at lifebydesign.institute on the web, or spiritualrevolutionradio.com if you want to be on our podcast. Definitely get a hold of me there. we can also take information from you on our website at, again, lifebydesign.institute. So find us there. Anything else you want to kind of finish up with? One last gem.
One last gem.
Yeah, in the last 10 seconds.
Oh, I don't know. I often tell people don't believe every thought you have.
Definitely. Get out of your mind, get into your art.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Love and peace, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
This has been Spiritual Revolution Radio with Dr. Will Miller. For more information or to be a guest, please visit lifebydesign.institute. Join us next week for another edition of Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller. This has been a production from a podcast studio.